I've solved over 500 LeetCode problems and I've been through these trenches, and I'm here to give you the top 5 patterns that you need to master to start your logic building journey. Hello everybody, welcome to Tech with Ninad, and today we'll be looking over 5 top patterns that you need to solve to actually start building logic and recognize patterns in LeetCode problems. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. So a disclaimer I'd like to give you is there is no such thing as if you master these patterns, you will almost solve all the problems on LeetCode. Eventually, you will have to solve 400 to 300 problems at least to have a good hand over how the LeetCode pattern problems are. So don't fall into the traps of just solving a few patterns. I'm giving you these patterns to help you start solving your problem solving journey and to actually recognize a few famous patterns. These are very famous and found in almost 40% of the problems. So these patterns, if you master, you will surely start recognizing these patterns and you will never fall short of your syntax or your logic. But you need additional preparation along with it. So with the disclaimer, let's move to the first pattern. So pattern number 1, this is the most beginner friendly pattern, prefix sum. So the prerequisite to study this pattern is arrays. You need the knowledge of arrays and a basic knowledge of for loops and basic additions in arrays. So what exactly is a prefix sum? Prefix means something that comes before something. Sum means an addition. Now the prefix sum is basically the addition of all the elements in the array in a prefix fashion. Now what I mean by it, on the screen you can see an array 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. If you look at it, and if I say that I have to calculate the prefix sum array of the array, it will be 1, it will be 3. Now why is it 3? It is the addition of 2 and 1. Then the next thing that will be in the array is 6. It is the addition of 3, 2 and 1. The next thing that will be in the array is 10, which is the addition of 4, 3, 2 and 1. And lastly, I will add 5 to the result and it will make it 15. That is exactly how prefix sums work. Now you may be asking, what's the point of this question? Well, prefix sums are famous because they are used in problems like calculating sums of subarrays. Now what is a subarray exactly? A subarray is basically a contiguous part of any array. Now what is contiguous? It basically means consecutive, back to back, continuous. That is what I mean by contiguous. And a subarray is a contiguous sequence of elements. So when you have to find that, you use this pattern, which is prefix sum. So now how do you find the prefix sum of a subarray? If you have the entire array, just as we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the prefix sum of this array is stored at the last index of your prefix sum array. So when you construct that array, now at the last index, you can see it is basically the culmination or the addition of every single element that came before. But you will say, hey Ninad, listen to me. I want you to give me the sum from index 3. Now the game changes because at index 3, you actually have just 4 and 5. That means the sum should be 9. But hey, my last index is 15. Now I'll tell you something. If you want the sum of the two elements in the array, and you already have the information that the current sum that you have at the last index is the sum of all the 5 elements, you simply need to use the subtraction operation. So if you need the sum of the 2 elements of this array, then you need to simply subtract the previous 3 elements from the array. The previous sum of the 3 elements is actually stored at the index 3. And now when I have to find the sum of the 2 elements at index 3 and 4, I will simply do prefix of 4 minus prefix of 2. This will give me the actual answer that I'm actually trying to find, 4, 5. The sum of this is actually the total minus the preceding sum. So the total minus the sum that I don't need is the sum that I need. So for prefix sum, I would recommend you these 2 problems: find the pivot index and subarray sum equals k. Now the subarray sum equals k is a slightly difficult problem, but you can do pivot index, and under pivot index you will again find in its description a problem that is exactly having the same approach as pivot index. So you can have maybe a different description of the problem as well. Here I have it on the screen as well. So make sure to check these problems out. Moving to pattern number 2, and this is my favorite pattern. It is a easy to medium level pattern, I would say. Sliding windows. Now sliding windows have a prerequisite of arrays, while loops, for loops, and a good amount of knowledge of how windows work. By windows I mean subarrays. This is why I put this pattern second, because prefix sums require you to have the knowledge of subarrays. Sliding window is actually just a subarray. A window is nothing but a subarray. A window is nothing but a subarray. Remember that. It is just a subarray. The only difference is that subarrays are static in nature, meaning their size doesn't change and the elements do not change. A window can add elements to it. It can remove elements from it. That is the basic definition of what a window is against a subarray. It can change in size and it can change in elements, and it is sliding, meaning the window is going through the array at once, and that is why you call it a sliding window. Sliding window problems are generally used to pick a set of contiguous elements. Again, I'm telling you contiguous, but it is not a subarray at this point. It is a sliding window. When a problem asks you for a contiguous subarray, now what I mean by contiguous, continuous, a continuous element sequence, or let's say the longest substring, a longest something which requires you to have the knowledge of from one element to two elements to three elements. Your demand keeps growing until a point that it is unsatisfied. Then you start shrinking the demand till it's satisfied. That is exactly the application of sliding windows. It's a very, very interesting archetype, and it will really teach you almost anything that you need to know about subarrays or pointers or just a sequence of elements. And for sliding windows, I would definitely tell you to go to LeetCode problem number 3, longest substring without repeating characters. My favorite problem, and I'm going to direct you to it because I believe that it is a fundamental problem to understand sliding windows. If you do it, then you understand sliding windows in and out. So make sure to solve that problem. Pattern number 3, tortoise and hare. Now this is a very tricky pattern, and I would call this an intermediate pattern. The prerequisites for this archetype is arrays and linked lists, and I would really like if you guys actually study arrays and linked lists as a whole, and with this you also need the knowledge of pointers. So now what exactly is the tortoise and hare approach? It is a very tricky archetype, and don't worry, this is an archetype that if you know it, you know it, and if you don't, it is very difficult to come up with this approach. It is a very mathematically calculated approach, so make sure to not be disheartened if you don't understand what it is in the first try. So what exactly is the tortoise and hare approach? It is also called as Floyd's cycle detection. This is an algorithm that you'll be studying later on. If you have not covered it, you won't understand the archetype. What does the tortoise and hare or the Floyd cycle detection tell you? It tells you that, hey, listen, there is a cycle in my linked list, but I don't want to use any additional data structure like a map to find out if I have a cycle. I don't want to store my nodes and keep asking every node that, are you the node that I stored? I don't want to do that. Instead, I want you to use an algorithm which uses O of 1 space complexity. Now, what is space complexity? It is basically the amount of space that you use. Don't worry, I will be making a video on big O notations, but that's not the topic of today. Ignore it if you don't understand. But you need to have basically the most space optimized solution that you can present. By the name, you can understand tortoise is somebody who's slow and the hare is somebody who's fast. So you initialize two pointers, slow and fast. Now, if there is a cycle in the given list, if in the given linked list or let's say an array, you will move the fast pointer by 2 steps and you will move the slow pointer by 1 step. Eventually, if there is a cycle, the loop will never end until both of the nodes collide. Eventually the pointers will collide if there is a cycle, and that is why you need to know this approach, because once these pointers collide, you know that there is a cycle and you will return true, else you will return false, because eventually if there's no cycle, one of the pointers, which is the fast pointer, will eventually run out. If the fast pointer runs out, that means you're done for. And there's a mathematical explanation to this approach, so make sure to learn it. It's a tricky approach. Understand and dry run over these problems, how it is working. It is generally a very, very great archetype to learn, and it is very beneficial to you in terms of learning pointers as well. For the tortoise and hare approach, I would recommend you to go ahead and solve linked list cycle 1 and linked list cycle 2. They're heavily based on this approach, and under linked list cycle 1 you will also find a similar problem which is based on arrays, which follows a similar tortoise and hare approach. Yes, it's a bit modified, but I think if you give it a try, you may even get a go at it. Okay, so make sure to try these two problems related to the tortoise and hare approach. Now moving towards pattern number 4, it is called as BFS, which is breadth first search. Now you may be wondering, it is not a pattern, it is like a very basic thing to know, but trust me, BFS is not something that is related to graphs or trees itself. BFS is a very famous algorithm. Now for learning BFS, you will need the prerequisite of graphs and trees, because you will learn BFS there, but after learning it there, you will finally need it in different types of problems. Some problems will require you to not even construct a graph. They won't even give you enough data that you can construct a graph. And constructing a tree for solving a problem is basically like banging your head against the wall. So it's of really no point. So these problems will never give you a graph. Rather, these problems will give you some set of data on which BFS is applicable. So having that knowledge to apply BFS to that data is important. And this is where BFS comes out from being a graph algorithm to actually being a problem algorithm. Okay, so make sure to learn BFS really well in terms of these problems. For BFS, I would definitely recommend you to solve rotting oranges and a shortest path in a binary matrix. Both of them require you to process one cell at a time as per its neighbors. So make sure to solve these problems. They are a direct application of a non-graph problem. That is what I was talking about. You need to master BFS, not BFS with graphs, right? So they're an application of a non-graph DFS. So make sure to solve these problems really well. And finally, the final boss of today's video. Pattern number 5 and the most difficult pattern is NSE or PSE, which stands for next smaller element or the greatest smaller element, which is calculated by stacks, which is primarily monotonic stack. Now, firstly, I would like to clear you that you will need for prerequisites a knowledge of stacks, a knowledge of heaps, a knowledge of general pointers and arrays, and a general knowledge of prefix sums, because that is how the entire approach goes. Prefix sums is not directly applied here, but somewhat the concept is similar. So you need to have that knowledge as well. This is why I have it in the very last. There are very famous problems which are hard problems which are solved by this pattern, or problems which are rated 1900 on LeetCode are solved by these patterns. So make sure to do this very well. Now, what is the NSE and PSE? We'll get to that, but before that, let me get to monotonic stack. Don't be scared. Monotonic stack is not a new data structure. It is just a stack, where a stack is generally used to solve problems like varied parentheses, where you basically put something in and you pop something out when you get an input. It follows the LIFO principle. So does the monotonic stack. The difference is that monotonic stack is basically just a simple stack. There is no such difference. It is just the same stack, except it is used to track the elements in a sorted fashion. There are certain requirements when you need to track these elements in a very sorted fashion, and that is when stacks come in handy for something like next smaller element. So what does next smaller element basically mean? So for example, there is an array on the screen right now which says 1, 3, 2, 5 and 4. So we will be calculating the NSE and PSE. Now, what is the next smaller and the previous smaller? It basically means for every element of the array, what is its next smallest element of the array? So for 1, the next smallest element is going to be n. Now, why n? It is basically the size of the array. That, hey, listen, if the pointer is pointing to the last index, which means that one is the smallest. Similarly, the previous smallest is going to be -1, which is the index before 0. So you do realize why it is n. It is not pointing to -1 because -1 we have to use for the previous smaller index. Okay, so that is how it works. For 2, the previous smaller is going to be 1 and the next smaller is going to be n. For 3, it is going to be next is 2 and the previous is 1. Similarly, for the other elements we have calculated values as well. So that is how next smaller and previous smaller works. Here are two problems that are listed on the screen. One is a hard problem and the other is also a medium hard problem that you need to understand. These two problems have a huge use of next smaller and previous smaller elements, and when you have these patterns under your belt, you will exactly understand how indexing works. Okay, so that's all for the video. I hope you really enjoyed the video and you understood these 5 patterns that you need to do. I really hope that you do your DSA really well and that you actually go ahead, and if you've done the required data structures or the prerequisites for every single pattern, then you can, or maybe at least try to sit through a problem for 1 hour. Forget the time limits of 15, 30, 45. Sit for an hour, maybe if 2 hours you require, but apply these patterns to those problems and understand the internal working. Dry run your code and you will eventually end up having these under your belt. And if somebody wakes you up from your sleep, you will still be able to solve those problems right in one go. So thank you everybody for watching the video. Make sure to give a like, subscribe and share the video as much as you can. And that's all from my side. Thank you. Ninad out.